You're doing great. By being consistent like this, what you get is a much easier flow of planning your project. Even though it might not seem as fun, like just get started on coding, this is crucial to becoming a great software engineer. You need to know what you're going to make before you get started typing the code. So again, great job. So what you're looking at now is Miro.com. This is what we will be using in order to have an event-driven session, is what the people usually call it. And I will write e-commerce project planning session. This session should allow us to gather all the information that are needed in order to build a successful project. Usually, along these lines, you usually add stakeholders and so on into this session, and it can last for 20 minutes. You have a timer here, and so on. But we are just one single person, so we will still be using it. You can see all these sticky notes here, which is what we will be using. So try to get familiar with what it has to offer for you. You can create a free version here. You can look at the templates. We will just be using these sticky notes. So for now, I will just get started by adding a blue thing here for event. What we are going to align here is the events that are going to happen for the application from a really high perspective. So don't think about this as too granular, meaning too detailed. Think about it more like an over level of what we are going to accomplish. So first we can say user visits web shop. That's a high level overview of what's going on. Let's copy this here. When user sees web shop, he should be amazed. Still a high level overview of what's going to happen. All right, so we know that based on this information, a user can decide if he wants to leave the page or stay on the page. So we can add same object here, can give it another color, user leaves page, or we could say user decides to stay on the page. That's what we are hoping for. User decides to stay. This is a high level overview of what's going to happen when the user visits the page. So when the user sees the web shop, he should be amazed. What should happen next? Well, now we can go into a bit more details, kind of like the events that will happen. So we could mark this as another color. We could for at least use pink here, and then we could say blue here. There are no strict rules, so you can just play around with this. Just have in mind that it should be really overview, not detailed. Right, so user has entered the web shop. What's going to do? He's going to buy, hopefully. If he's going to buy, then something needs to happen behind the scenes. Now we can start to get into more advanced topics. So let's just make it like this. We can do it like that. We can add another here, and now we can say this is an event that should happen. What should happen? Well, data should be fetched. Right, so data should be fetched, meaning he should be able to see all the data. Before the user buys, he needs to decide which thing he wants to, buy, right? So we could say that we have another thing happening here. Before that happens, we could have another type of note here. So before the user buys, he needs to decide which furniture or object he wants to buy. So you can see that by playing around with this, your mind is now starting to work because you have it like post-it notes, which is quite nice. So user is going to buy, but before that happens, he will actually decide which furniture to buy. So we could do it like this instead. And as you can see, we can just change it around the way it works. Make it pink again. The buy part here is actually going to trigger some events. So let's make this for now green. And then the events which are down here should happen. But before we do, data should be fetched. Let's wait with this for a moment. And let's just say, before a user buys, what do you guys think needs to happen first? Doesn't the user need to be authenticated? Okay, now we are getting into more advanced scenarios. So we could say just authenticated here. Based on that, we could now say that different things could happen in this part. And since this is an event, we can just add more blue notes to signify that this will happen, kind of with the same part.